This is the Amtrak train database, and this is Query2 for this system. Essentially what we're trying to do in Query2 is we are going to give an overall summary of a trip for a specific customer. When we book a trip on this system, if, say, a customer is booking a trip from St. Louis to Chicago, this will contain one intermediate step of stopping in Bloomington. So the trip, instead of being St. Louis to Chicago, is actually St. Louis to Bloomington, Bloomington to Chicago. Well, there's certain instances where we're not going to want to report this information, this whole information, to the customer. Instead, we'll just want to report the St. Louis to Chicago. So in order to do that, what we have is we've got two inner queries, the first of which joins reservation route to route on route ID, and then it takes the departure station and it joins station to route on the departure station equaling station code. And what this does is it just gives us the station, a meaningful name for the station that this first reservation route is coming from. And when we go to choose where we want to select these entries, we have a second level subquery in which we join route with reservation route again, and we do this where the expected departure is the minimum value. So in other words, we are selecting all reservation routes where we've got a certain reservation ID, and we are going to limit this to just the earliest leaving a route. And the second subquery is incredibly similar to this first subquery. All we do is, again, we join reservation route to route ID, and then we join arrival station to station code. So just like before, we were just trying to find the meaningful name of the station associated with the reservation route. We're finding the meaningful name of the station associated with the reservation route of the arrival, the latest arrival. And then in order to find this latest arrival, again, we join route to reservation route on route ID, and then we select it with the maximum expected arrival. Now, by doing this way, we're kind of taking a leap of faith and accepting that the data entry for a specific route is valid. So if a reservation is made with first traveling from Chicago to Madison and then from Chicago to Bloomington, this obviously isn't a legitimate trip because the customer will be in Madison when they're supposed to be traveling from Chicago to Bloomington. However, we can count on the data entry. We're not really doing any error checking in this stage of our system. We're just accepting the fact that the data entry has been done accurately. So if we look at the results of this query, on this first example, where we are selecting reservation ID 3, we find that reservation ID 3 will take us from Madison to Kansas, and that's all we wanted to know, which Madison to Kansas is actually a 4-step trip. It goes from Madison to Chicago, Chicago to Bloomington, Bloomington to St. Louis, and St. Louis to Kansas. In another example of this query, we're going to select where the reservation ID equals 2. And this reservation is simply from Bloomington to Chicago. And this is a single step. Bloomington goes directly to Chicago. So what we've done with this is verified that it will work when the maximum arrival time is the same trip as the minimum departure time.